So
simply because the elements are synonymous.
that's exactly right. The elements are synonymous.
Which is the axiom of
Separation. It's separated out in the set, right? Because I have a set of. The important thing to keep in mind here is we're talking about inclusion, which isn't itself an axiom.
okay, never mind. This is
So what we have is okay. So what we have, right, is we have a set, which is the set of all odd numbers, or a set of all prime numbers over 100, which includes all these elements. To which all these elements belong to it, right? All these prime numbers over 100 belong to it. Well, all those same numbers belong to the set of all odd numbers, right? They belong to it. But also, because they are in the set of all prime numbers over 100, they're also included, right? The set of all prime numbers is included in the set of all whole numbers. It simultaneously belongs, right? Because obviously they have all the same elements. But it's also included because every element that it has is also included in the other one. So it both belongs and is included.
But it doesn't go the opposite way. Because obviously all
right.
numbers are prime numbers, while prime numbers are whole numbers.
Right.
Okay.
So does that make sense? Okay, so this would be an ordinary multiple. Does that make sense? Because it's both.
It doesn't violate it doesn't have the mental or whatever. It's all ordinary as far as ontology goes.
Yeah, well, and also it's, okay, let me do the exact term. It's also normal. Okay, and everyone understands what normal means?
Right, it's both presented and represented.
Which is another way of saying it both belongs and is included.
Right.
Okay? So here's another thing. The set of all prime numbers, right, and the set of all odd numbers, no, that set doesn't work. I'm trying to find a singular element. A singular term which is presented but not represented. And I'm sorry, I'm not good enough with numbers. I. Imaginary.
Yes. The square root of -1 can't be presented. But
right,
only can be represented.
It can be presented. So to what set does it belong?
Because
we're talking about...
It doesn't belong to the set of whole numbers.
Right, but what we're talking about here is the different typology of sets.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we would need is for it to be represented but not presented, is we would need the set to which it belongs. And that it only is included in that set, but doesn't belong to that set.
Oh, okay.
Actually, he uses this example, I forget because I read this really late last night. I don't know if he's used it yet, or maybe it's in the future. An example he uses is a family in France that acts as a family in public, but never is seen, but only stays home, or only, they're illegal immigrants, they have no papers, and they hide in the ghetto separately all the time. So they're included in France, right, as a family, but they don't belong to France because they're not French citizens, they're not a French family, they don't have papers, they're never together as a family, except when they're being represented in France in general. I don't know, I thought it was a weird example too, but this conceptually would be an excrescence.
Oh, maybe a good example might be employment figures. Right, because you might be included in unemployment figures, but not be a part of unemployment figures.
How so? It's possible. I'm just wanting you to flesh that out a bit.
Well, for instance, you might not be presented as sort of a statistic of unemployment. Like, for instance, there's the unemployment rate, there's the formal one, and then there's the informal one, right? Mm-hmm. Where you might be considered unemployed. Actually think about it from not a perspective of poverty, but rich people. Paris Hilton might not have a job, she might be included in the set of unemployed, but she doesn't belong to unemployed. I don't know.
Yeah, it's weird. It helps to
Listen, your example wasn't a whole ton better.
No, this is, okay, what I'm going to posit here, and perhaps it's maybe just, again, my lack of sleep, but this is one of the problems with trying to crush set theory. It doesn't work out, because set theory is not imaginary, right? You can only basically see the sort of implications that it has. There's not going to be a pure, right, correspondence between things. So, in any case, excrescence, something is represented, but it is not present.
Singular,
Singular is it belongs,
but it's not present.
right, and
It's
so,
not represented.
yeah. So, I mean, we'll get into it later, right? This would be one of the possible understandings of the proletariat, right? Is the proletariat don't have, are those with no place in society. So in the concrete, obviously they belong to the existent society, right? They're real, tangible people. But when they are counted by the state, right, by what renders the parts of society consistent, they're not included.
So they're presented but not represented.
Right, and this would make them singular.
Mm-hmm.
A good example would be illegal immigrants today, right? They're obviously here in our society, they do work, they have families, but the only ways in which they're represented in our world is qua illegal immigrant. Does that make sense? Not as individuals.
Right. Another good example might be like gays in the military. They're presented, but they're not represented.
Yeah, that also would work. So basically, a normal situation appears in both the structure and in the state of the situation. The singular is lost to the state, again, because it's not a part, it's only an element. And the excrescence only exists in the state, and this is on 100. So on 101, these basic types create the difficulties within set theory because they cannot have two axiomatic systems. So ontology cannot formulate any state to guarantee itself, and therefore the void permeates the entirety of ontology. Right? You can't have one ontology for singular elements and one for normal and excrescent elements. So there's nothing that can guarantee ontology in and of itself. Is that, everyone's solid on that? And then of course there's the drawings on page 102 and 103 for the diagrams of the situation and the state of the situation. So is there any questions immediately on this? If not, we're going to move on to meditation 9. Okay, meditation 9 sort of gives us a little bit of Marx and political theory. Meditation 9 is the state of the historical and social situation. Sorry, handwriting is bad. So basically, Badiou uses a couple historical examples to sort of show the various types. He talks about the Marxist conception of the state remains mostly correct. The state does not concern itself with individuals, but instead concerns itself with classes of people. So, simply put, it does not concern itself with its with the elements of the situation, right? The actual elements that are here in America, but rather with the parts, right? The classifications of individuals, right? A banal example, right, is that it's not concerned about, the law is not concerned about you, it's concerned about your driver's license and your social security number and what sorts of things are happening to those.
Another way of putting it is that you belong to it, but you are included, but you are not belonging to it.
Right, exactly.
Well, even a better example, we're going to be probably Marxist about it is, yeah, there's people, right, I'm in the Marxist state, but if you're a counter-revolutionary, it only cares about you in a certain special kind of way.
Right, which is to say qua counter.
Involves a firing squad. So.
Well, I mean, even that is overly materialistic.
Okay.
It's only concerned about you qua counter-revolutionary.
Okay.
It's not concerned about you as the delanded aristocrat. It's not concerned about you as a particular bitter factory owner, right? It's concerned about you qua the sub-multiple to which you belong, which would be counter-revolutionary. And again, that's 104 to 105. 105 and 106, the state, and this is where he's a little bit critical of Marx, is the state seeks to regulate not general society but classes, this is where he continues. So this also shows, to a certain extent, the accuracy of the state, or of the statement, that every state is a state of the ruling class, right? Because ultimately the goal of the state is to regulate the explosive differences, excesses caused by the differences between itself and its actual situation, right? It becomes a representation of existent society.